her, then again. Slowly. Differently. She knew what he saw. Not the girl from the photograph. Not the slim, God-fearing widow she claimed to be in her letters. Just her. Olivia. Big, tear-stained, fragile, and terrified. She stepped down from the coach with shaking knees, heart hammering so loud she swore the whole platform could hear it. Her boots hit the dirt with a dull thud. Then Carrick walked forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. He stopped 3 feet from her. She braced herself for the look of disgust. For the polite rejection. For the words that would send her back into that coach with what little pride she had left. But instead he spoke. Like he meant it. It's over. Her chest tightened. You're safe now. Her knees nearly gave out. Tears exploded from her eyes like a dam finally breaking. She covered her face, ashamed, certain someone would laugh, certain someone would jeer. But no one did. Because Carrick stepped beside her, placed a steady hand on her back, and guided her away from the gawking crowd without a single word. They walked in silence. Past the saloon where the piano music stopped. Past the general store where a clerk peeked out from behind the curtain. Past 2 women on the boardwalk whose whispers died on their lips the moment Carrick looked their way. He helped her into the wagon like she weighed nothing. She sat, shaking, hands gripping her valise like a shield. He climbed up beside her, took the reins, and snapped the leather. The horses pulled forward into the dust. Olivia didn't dare speak. Not yet. Not after the way her last promise shattered everything. Carrick kept his eyes on the road ahead. You don't have to explain. Not now. I lied, she whispered. His jaw clenched. She saw it. Heard it in the breath he took before replying. I figured. Olivia braced for rejection. But you're here, he added. Which means you ran from something worse. She blinked. You don't want to send me back? No. Why? He didn't answer right away. Just flicked the reins gently as they passed a field of prairie grass waving like ocean waves under a tired sun. I've seen fear before, he said at last. Yours ain't ordinary. Yours looks like mine did after the war. You don't fake that. Olivia stared at him, stunned. She'd been called many things. Dramatic. Hysterical. Liar. She'd never once been called truthful. I wasn't always like this, she whispered. The weight, it came after. Carrick didn't flinch. They locked me in a room when I tried to leave, she said. My fiancé. He said no man would ever want me again. Not after what I'd done. Carrick's hands tightened on the reins, leather groaning under his grip. He sent men after me, she continued. Said if I ran again he'd bury me in the river. Said, you're safe now, Carrick repeated, cutting her off gently. It wasn't just words. It was a promise. They reached the ranch just before sunset. The land stretched wide and golden, framed by cottonwoods and distant mountains. A modest house sat at the center, 2 rocking chairs on the porch, smoke curling from the chimney. Carrick helped her down again, slower this time, his hands warmer, less guarded. Olivia barely noticed Rusty, the brown dog that bounded up excitedly. She was too busy scanning the horizon, certain someone would ride up behind them with fury in their eyes. But no one came. Carrick opened the front door and held it for her. She stepped into a home that smelled like pine soap and bread. It was clean, but lived in. Not a single lock on the doors. He pointed to the stairs. Rooms up there. First on the right. Clean linens. Window overlooks the range. Olivia didn't move. He didn't pressure her. Instead, he walked to the kitchen and ladled stew into a bowl, then another. He placed one at the table nearest the window. No expectations. No questions. After a long moment, she sat across from him. Steam rose between them. The silence felt soft. Heavy, but not cruel. You still want a wife? She asked quietly. I want a partner, he said. Someone who doesn't flinch when the storms come. I'm not what you asked for. Neither was I, he replied. Not after what the war did to me. She looked down. You're kind. I'm tired, he said. Of being alone. Of looking behind my shoulder. Of waiting for something better when maybe better just looks different than we expected. A tear slipped down her cheek. Not the broken kind. The healing kind. Then maybe, she said, voice trembling, we can be different together. Carrick gave the smallest nod. And in that tiny motion, a whole world shifted. She wasn't what he ordered. He wasn't what she feared. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning. That first night, Olivia barely slept. Not because the bed was uncomfortable, it was the softest she'd ever felt, but because her body didn't trust peace yet. The silence outside, the quiet creak of the wooden house, the rhythmic hum of wind in the grass, it all felt too gentle. Too unreal. She kept expecting a fist against the door. A shout. A demand to come home. But morning came, and nothing shattered the quiet. Sunlight spilled through the window. Birds chirped from the trees. And downstairs, she heard the muffled sound of a man moving, boots on floorboards, the soft clang of a kettle. When Olivia crept down the stairs, Carrick was already outside, tossing feed to the chickens. He didn't say a word when he saw her standing in the doorway. Just tipped his head in greeting and kept working like it was the most natural thing in the world to have a stranger, an overweight, unwanted, runaway stranger, living in his home. She made breakfast to say thank you. Just eggs and bread, with a bit of jam she found in the cupboard. But when he sat down and took a bite, he nodded slowly and said, "Best eggs I've had in months." It wasn't about the eggs. She knew that, and that made it mean more. Later, he showed her the barn, the corral, the creek that curved like a ribbon behind the property. Rusty ran ahead, sniffing everything like it was brand new. Carrick pointed things out with short, quiet explanations. No grand speeches. No tests to prove her worth. He just let her exist beside him. She hadn't been allowed to do that in years. At the chicken coop, she hesitated. "I can help," she offered. "You sure?" She nodded. The coop was warm, filled with the earthy scent of hay and feathers. Olivia reached in and pulled out a warm brown egg, holding it like a fragile secret. Carrick watched her, then said softly, "You don't have to prove anything to me." "I know," she said, but it still felt good to do something useful. That night, they ate together again, stew from the day before, with fresh cornbread Olivia had made from scratch. They talked a little more. She told him about her mother's garden. He told her about losing his brother in the war. Neither of them went too deep, but they weren't strangers anymore. On the third day, the letter arrived. Carrick was chopping wood when the stagecoach driver rode up the path with a dust-covered envelope. No stamp, just Olivia's name in a jagged scrawl. She recognized it instantly. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The words inside were few. "You think you can run from me? You're mine. I'll come for you." Just like before. The letter slipped from her fingers. Carrick was at her side in an instant. "What is it?" She handed it to him, heart pounding, ears ringing. She felt the old fear rise up like bile in her throat. The panic. The helplessness. He read it once. His jaw tensed. Then he calmly folded the paper and walked it to the stove. Without a word, he lit a match and dropped it into the flames. The letter crumpled and blackened. Turned to ash. Then he turned to her. "He won't touch you again. Not while you're under my roof." Tears streamed down her face. "I mean it," he said, voice low but fierce. "He shows up here, he'll wish he hadn't." She tried to believe him. Tried to breathe. But the weight of her past sat on her chest like a boulder. "He found me once before," she whispered. "I don't know how, but he did." Carrick looked at her for a long moment, then walked to the door, whistled for Rusty, and saddled up his horse. "Where are you going?" she called. "To make sure you're safe," he said without looking back. He didn't come back until after dark. When he did, his knuckles were scraped. His clothes dusty. But his eyes were steady. "I spoke to the sheriff," he said. "Told him the whole story. Showed him the letter. We have a witness now. A record. And I put word out to the station master. If any man comes asking for you, I'll be the first to know." Olivia stood there, stunned. "No one's going to hurt you again," he said. "Not while I've got breath in my body." The next morning, she found a small pistol on the table. Not big. Just enough for protection. She looked at him. "For you," he said simply. Just in case. She nodded, tears burning her eyes. Thank you. You ever shot before? She shook her head. I'll teach you. They spent the afternoon behind the barn. Carrick showed her how to hold the weapon, how to breathe, how to aim. Her hands shook. The first shot missed entirely. That's okay, he said gently. Again. The second grazed the edge of the target. She lowered the gun, breathing hard. Her palms were slick with sweat. I can't, she whispered. Yes, he said. You can. I'm not strong enough. He stepped closer. His voice was quiet, steady. You're standing here, aren't you? After everything? Her lip quivered. That's strength, he said. Don't let him take that from you. She looked up at him. Really looked. And for the first time in her life, she saw a man who wasn't just saying the words. He believed them. He believed in her. Something shifted inside her that day. She wasn't just hiding anymore. She was surviving. They kept practicing every few days. She got better. Steadier. She learned how to ride Daisy, the calm Palomino Carrick saddled just for her. He adjusted the stirrups without teasing her size, gave her advice without ever talking down to her. And when she fell, because of course she did, he didn't laugh. He helped her up, dusted her off, and said, "Try again." Weeks passed. Spring turned into summer. Her dresses grew looser. Her shoulders straighter. The nightmares didn't come as often. She started smiling at Rusty's antics. Started humming while she cooked. Started catching Carrick watching her sometimes when she wasn't looking. One night, after a long day of fencing repairs and bread baking, they sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the hills. She turned to him, heart pounding. I need to ask you something. He looked over. All right. That first day, she said, when you said, it's over, you're safe now. What did you mean? Carrick was quiet a long time. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring into the prairie. I saw something in you I knew too well. That look people get when they've been carrying fear for too long. He looked at her now. I knew you didn't need judgment. You needed a landing place. And I guess I hoped, maybe, we both did. Olivia's breath caught. He reached over slowly, gave her hand a light squeeze. Did you find what you were looking for? He asked. She nodded, voice shaking. More than I thought I deserved. Carrick's eyes softened. You deserve peace, Olivia. And not because of what you've survived. Just because you're you. She looked at him, really looked. And whispered, so do you. That night, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She slept in safety. In silence. In the warm, steady beat of a house that had begun to feel like home. 3 weeks later, Olivia woke up gasping. Not from a nightmare. Not from fear. From the sound of hooves. Distant, fast, angry. She threw the blanket off and ran to the window, heart hammering in her chest. A single rider. Black horse. Hat pulled low. Dust trailing behind him like smoke. Carrick was already outside. He stood on the porch barefoot, a rifle leaning quietly against his leg. Rusty growled beside him, low and tense. Olivia didn't need to ask who it was. She knew. She felt it in her spine. Stay inside, Carrick said, not taking his eyes off the rider. Her feet froze on the stairs. But her fists clenched the banister until her knuckles turned white. The rider pulled to a stop 20 yards from the porch, dust swirling around him. He slid off the horse like he owned the world. Dark coat. Gold ring. Scar under one eye. Elliot Hart. The man who once promised her love, then locked her away like property. He didn't look surprised to see her. He looked entitled. Well, Elliot said, eyes sweeping over her body through the open doorway. Didn't take you long to crawl into someone else's bed. Carrick didn't move. You're not welcome here. Elliot smirked. Didn't come for a drink, cowboy. I came for what's mine. She's not yours, Carrick said evenly. She never was. That's not what the law says. Carrick stepped down from the porch. Olivia's breath caught. Law's changing, Carrick said. Sheriff's got your threats in writing. I suggest you get on that horse and ride back where you came from. Elliot's smile twisted. You really think she's worth dying for? He asked, stepping closer. A liar? A fat little fraud who… The rifle cracked. Olivia screamed. The shot didn't hit Elliot. Carrick had fired into the dirt 2 inches from his boot. Dust sprayed his pant leg. Rusty lunged forward, barking ferociously. "Next one won't miss," Carrick said coldly. Elliot's eyes narrowed. For the first time, Olivia saw it. Fear in the man who had always made her afraid. "You got no idea who I am," Elliot hissed. "I don't care," Carrick said. "You show up here again, I'll bury you myself." Silence. Then Elliot turned, slow and bitter, mounted his horse, and spat into the dirt. "This isn't over." Carrick raised the rifle again. "Yes, it is." The horse turned and galloped back into the hills. Olivia collapsed against the doorway, shaking. Carrick turned slowly. His chest rose and fell like a blacksmith's bellows. His hands still clenched the rifle like it was part of him. He walked up the steps, gently took her hands, and guided her to the chair on the porch. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "What if he comes back?" Carrick knelt in front of her. "If he does, I'll be ready." "But I'm not." "You will be." That night, Olivia didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the moonlight stretch over the hills. Waiting. Listening. Wondering if he would return. But he didn't. The next morning, Carrick made coffee and fried eggs like it was any other day. She sat across from him, silent. "Tell me what you need," he said softly. She looked up. "I need to stop feeling like prey." "Then let's make you a predator." He meant it. And he meant every step of what came next. Over the following weeks, he trained her harder. Not just with the pistol, but with her mind. Her posture. Her voice. He taught her how to speak like she owned the ground she stood on. "You don't owe anyone softness," he told her. "Only truth. And protection. For yourself." She worked the ranch like she was born to it. Chopping kindling, milking Bessie, feeding calves, fixing fences. Her arms thickened. Her legs steadied. Her face no longer flinched when people spoke. The townspeople began to see it too. At church, whispers turned to greetings. At the general store, Beatrice Wilson offered her fresh fabric and a warm hug. "You look good, honey," she said kindly. "Happy suits you." By August, Olivia no longer hid behind her cloak. She walked through town beside Carrick, chin high, eyes clear, dressed in a navy blue dress that hugged her waist and flared at the hips. When Elliot's name came up, she didn't tremble. She asked, "Has anyone seen him?" And meant it. Because now she wasn't afraid of him. One evening, as the sun melted down behind the ridges, she and Carrick sat by the creek watching the cattle drink. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "Every day." After all this." Carrick nodded slowly. "I'd like to build another barn. Get more cattle. Maybe something smaller too." He hesitated. "Like a family?" Olivia's breath caught. "A child?" He looked at her, unsure. "You don't have to answer now." But she did. "I'd like that," she said. And she meant it. He smiled. Not just with his mouth, but his whole face. And then he reached into his coat pocket. "I had this made," he said, pulling out a small ring, plain gold, with a single pearl in the center. Her hands flew to her mouth. "I know it's not fancy," he said, suddenly nervous. "But it's… I love it," she whispered, cutting him off. He took her hand and slid it on her finger. "Then stay." She leaned in, kissed him like she'd never kissed anyone in her life. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, she lay beside him, her hand on his chest, her heart quiet for the first time in years. No weight of fear. No ghosts tapping at the door. Only the deep breath of a woman who had finally found where she belonged. And knew, without doubt, that she was safe. Because she made herself safe. With the man who once said the words, "It's over. You're safe now." And made them true. Fall arrived with crisp mornings and golden hills. The leaves turned to fire. The air smelled of smoke, pine, and baking bread. Inside the small house on Carrick Montgomery's ranch, Olivia Dawson, now Olivia Montgomery, folded a blanket over the cradle Carrick built with his own hands. Their baby wasn't born yet, but the love already was. Every plank of the cradle had been sanded smooth, Every joint fitted perfectly. Carrick carved a small daisy into the headboard, for the horse Olivia rode the day she started believing in herself again. He didn't say much when he presented it, just placed his calloused hand on her belly and whispered, "For both of you." By now, the whole town knew. Not just that Olivia was expecting, but that she had become something no one had dared imagine when she first arrived. Respected, admired, but women came to her for advice. Young girls whispered her name like she was a story come to life. Even the men at the feed store greeted her with a tip of their hats and a rare kind of softness in their voices. Not pity, respect. She hadn't lost weight the way she once dreamed she would. But she had gained something far better. Strength, pride, and Carrick, her once silent, wounded cowboy, had softened in her light. He laughed more, slept deeper, kissed her on the cheek in front of neighbors and didn't care who saw. He still said little. But when he spoke, it mattered. "You saved me too," he told her once as they sat by the fire. She smiled, knowing it was true. Because they hadn't just built a marriage. They had built a life. Together. One night, just before the first frost, a rider came to town with news. Elliot Hart had been arrested 2 counties east, caught running a swindle on a young widow. Fraud, coercion, and attempted assault. He'd be locked up for a long time. Carrick told Olivia the moment he returned from town. She stared at the fire for a long moment. Then nodded. "I'm not surprised. You all right?" "Yes." And she was. Truly. Because for the first time in her life, Olivia no longer needed someone else to promise she was safe. She had made her own safety. She had faced her past. She had built something better. The following Sunday, Carrick and Olivia stood at the front of the church as Preacher Jenkins said a special prayer over their unborn child. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass like a hymn. When they stepped out, neighbors greeted them with pies, blankets, and blessings. Beatrice Wilson pressed Olivia's hands in hers. "You're not just a bride anymore, dear. You're the heart of this town now." And Olivia believed it. Later that evening, after supper, Carrick stood behind her as she looked out across the ranch from their porch. The sky was purple with the last breath of sunset. Their home glowed with candlelight. He placed both hands gently on her belly, then leaned close. "You ready?" She smiled. "I already am." And in that moment, with the world quiet, with new life stirring inside her and old pain finally buried, Olivia understood what it meant to be truly free. Not because someone rescued her, but because she finally believed she was worth saving. And that made all the difference. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss the next journey. Thanks for watching. You're safe here too.